Everyone at the academy thought the Krakthian bully was unstoppable, until a quiet human girl snapped his neck in front of 800 witnesses. Look, I need to be honest with you right from the start. My name is Kelvin, and I am a Threxian, which means I have got 4 eyes, blue skin that shimmers under certain lights, and absolutely zero desire for unnecessary drama. I have been attending the Galactic Academy for 3 cycles now, studying xenobiology because apparently I thought it would be, quote, fascinating, unquote, to learn about species that could accidentally kill me just by sneezing wrong. Smart choice, Kelvin. Really brilliant. The Galactic Academy sits on Station Harmony, a massive orbital platform that floats in neutral space, far from any homeworld's jurisdiction. Thousands of students from hundreds of species all crammed together, learning mathematics, stellar navigation, diplomatic protocols, and how not to accidentally insult someone's antenna configuration. It is exactly as chaotic as it sounds. Trust me. Now, when the humans showed up, I will admit, I did not think much of it at first. We get transfer students all the time. Another species, another set of dietary requirements for the cafeteria staff to accommodate. Another pronunciation nightmare for the attendance systems. Standard procedure, really. Her name was Maya Chen, and she walked into our advanced astrophysics class on a Tuesday morning looking like she had just rolled out of bed, threw on some clothes, and decided that was good enough for intergalactic education. Dark hair pulled back in what humans call a ponytail, simple gray clothing, and an expression that could only be described as, well, bored. Supremely, utterly, magnificently bored. Professor Thendril, our instructor who has more tentacles than patience, barely glanced up from his datapad. Ah, yes, the Terran transfer. Take any available seat, Miss Chen. Maya nodded once, scanned the lecture hall with those strange forward-facing eyes that humans have. You know, the predator configuration that makes you wonder what they are really looking at, and selected a seat 3 rows from the back, right next to a Ventrian kid, who immediately scooted his chair about 6 inches away. Not subtle, but I got it. Humans made people nervous. See, there were rumors about Earth. Whispers, really. Passed around in cafeteria lines and study groups. The kind of stories that start with someone saying they heard from their cousin's roommate's lab partner that Terra, the human homeworld, was classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. And if you do not know what that means, let me paint you a picture with words here, because it is absolutely terrifying. A Class 12 Deathworld is a planet that actively tries to murder everything living on it. Extreme gravity, violent weather patterns, predators with ridiculous biological advantages, diseases that evolve faster than medical science can track them, and plants, oh stars above, even the plants can kill you. Supposedly, Earth has a flowering bush that causes severe allergic reactions just from proximity, and do not even get me started on the stories about their oceans. Apparently, humans have things called sharks living in there, which are basically organic submarines with teeth that never stop growing and an appetite for anything that moves wrong. But looking at Maya Chen sitting there pulling out a stylus and tablet with the enthusiasm of someone about to watch paint dry, I found the whole Deathworld thing pretty hard to believe. She was small, maybe 5.5 feet tall if I had to guess using human measurements. Slim build, no visible natural weapons like claws or fangs or venom sacs. Nothing about her screamed danger, nothing about her screamed anything really, except maybe please let this lecture end soon so I can go back to sleep. She sat perfectly still throughout the entire class, taking notes occasionally, never raising her hand, never asking questions. When Professor Thendril made a joke about quantum entanglement that absolutely nobody laughed at because it was not funny, Maya did not even crack a smile. She just sat there, calm as deep space, like the universe could explode around her and she would simply take notes about the explosion's trajectory and probable cause. I remember thinking, this is what everyone is worried about. This quiet girl who looks like a strong breeze might knock her over. The galaxies must be getting soft if this is what passes for scary these days. Yeah, I was an idiot. A complete, total, absolute idiot. And I was about to learn exactly why humans do not need to look dangerous to be the most dangerous thing in any room they occupy. Now, before we get to the part where everything went sideways, I need to tell you about Vordak Ren. Because understanding Vordak is absolutely essential to understanding why what happened next was so completely and utterly insane. Vordak was a Krakthian, and if you have never met a Krakthian before, Congratulations on your functional survival instincts. These guys are built like someone took a boulder, gave it arms the size of tree trunks, added legs that could crush steel plating, and then decided to top it all off with a face that looked like it had been in a few dozen fights and won every single one of them, through sheer intimidation. They stand about 7 feet tall on average. Their skin is this rough, gray textured stuff that is basically organic armor, and they have got bone ridges along their shoulders and forearms that serve absolutely no purpose except to make them look even more aggressive. Krakthians come from a high-gravity world, something like twice what most species consider comfortable, which means they are strong. Not just, oh, I can lift heavy things. Strong. I mean casually bend reinforced metal, punch through walls, toss furniture across rooms without breaking a sweat. Strong. Their culture values dominance and physical prowess above pretty much everything else, and they have got this lovely tradition where showing weakness is considered basically the worst thing you could possibly do. Vordak Ren took all of these natural Krakthian characteristics and decided to turn them into his entire personality. He had been at the academy for 5 cycles, which was longer than most students because, surprise, surprise, academic excellence was not exactly his priority. His priority was making sure everyone knew he was the biggest, meanest, most dangerous entity in any space he occupied. I had watched Vordak operate for 3 cycles now, and let me tell you, the guy had intimidation down to a science. He would walk down corridors like he owned them, and smaller species would flatten themselves against walls to let him pass. In the cafeteria he would take seats from students just because he felt like it, and they would surrender their spots without a single word of protest. Once I saw him grab a Pixarian kid's datapad during an exam review session, hold it above his head where the poor kid could not possibly reach it, and laugh while the Pixarian nearly had a nervous breakdown trying to get it back. The academy staff knew about Vordak's behavior, of course they did. But Krakthian diplomatic influence meant disciplinary action was always, shall we say, carefully considered, which is administrative speak for, we are too scared of political consequences to actually do anything meaningful about this problem. So Vordak continued his reign of being an absolute menace, and the rest of us learned the unspoken rule that governs station harmony social dynamics. Stay out of Vordak's way. Do not make eye contact. Do not challenge him. Do not even accidentally bump into him in crowded hallways. Just keep your head down, move quickly, and pray to whatever deities your species believes in that you do not become his target for the day. Maya Chen either did not know about this rule, or she simply did not care, and honestly I could not figure out which option was worse. I started noticing it about 4 days after she arrived. She would walk down the same corridors Vordak used, not pressed against walls but right down the middle, moving at her own pace like she had every right to the space. In the library, she took a seat at a table that everyone knew Vordak's group usually claimed during study hours, and she did not move when they showed up. She just looked up, nodded politely at them like they were fellow students instead of threats, and went back to her reading. The first time I saw her accidentally shoulder-check Vordak while moving through a crowded common area. My 3 hearts, yes, Threxians have 3. Do not ask, it is complicated, all stopped simultaneously. She had been looking at her datapad, walking with that same unhurried calm she always had, and just walked right into his arm. His massive, could crush your skull like an overripe fruit, arm. She glanced up, said something that looked like sorry, and kept walking. Vordak had stared after her with this expression of absolute confusion mixed with growing anger, like his brain could not quite process what had just happened. No one bumped into Vordak Ren. No one apologized that casually and walked away. It did not compute. I watched this interaction from about 15 feet away, all 4 of my eyes wide with horror, thinking, oh no. Oh no no. This human girl has no idea what she just did. She has no idea who she just disrespected. She has no idea that Vordak Ren does not forget slights, does not forgive accidents, and absolutely does not tolerate anyone treating him like he is just another student. I wanted to warn her. Honestly, I did. But what was I supposed to say? Excuse me, human I have never spoken to. You should probably be terrified of the 7-foot-tall violence machine you just bumped into. Just a friendly heads up from your concerned classmate. Yeah. That would have gone well. So instead I did what every other student at the Galactic Academy did when trouble was brewing. I kept my head down, minded my own business, and hoped desperately that I would not be anywhere nearby when Vordak finally decided to teach the oblivious human a lesson about hierarchy, respect, and the natural order of who gets to walk wherever they want without consequences. Spoiler alert. I was absolutely nearby. Front row seat, actually. Lucky me. The cafeteria at Station Harmony during peak lunch hours is controlled chaos, and I mean that in the most literal sense possible. You have got approximately 800 students from 70 different species all trying to obtain food, find seating, and consume nutrition without accidentally poisoning themselves with someone else's dietary requirements. The noise level alone could probably violate several galactic sound ordinance regulations, with everyone talking, arguing, laughing, and the occasional food dispenser malfunctioning in ways that sound like small explosions. I was sitting with my study group, a collection of relatively peaceful species, who had bonded over mutual anxiety and shared homework struggles, when I spotted Maya Chen entering the cafeteria. She moved through the food line with that same unbothered energy she brought to everything, selecting items from the human-compatible section, which the Academy had apparently installed specifically for her arrival. I watched her load up her tray with things that looked disturbingly like actual dead animal flesh, because humans are omnivores and apparently have no issues with eating creatures that used to have faces, and some kind of plant matter that might have been vegetables. She scanned the cafeteria for seating, and here is where my anxiety started climbing, because the only available spots were either next to groups who would definitely not welcome a human, or at a small table near the windows that was, technically speaking, in Vordak's usual territory. Not his actual assigned seat, because we are not in primary education here, but everyone knew that whole section was basically his domain. Maya, displaying either incredible courage or absolute cluelessness, walked straight to that window table and sat down. Just sat down, arranged her tray, pulled out her datapad and started eating while reading something on the screen. Completely casual, completely calm, completely unaware that she had just made a choice that was going to have consequences. I elbowed Rickson, the Ventrian sitting next to me, and nodded toward Maya. Oh no. Rickson followed my gaze and his antenna drooped, which is Ventrian body language for, we are about to witness something terrible. Is she serious right now? I think she genuinely does not know, I whispered back, watching Maya take a bite of her food with zero concern for her surroundings. And then, because the universe has a truly terrible sense of timing, Vordak Ren entered the cafeteria with his crew, 3 other Krakthians, all nearly as large and intimidating as he was, flanking him like some kind of aggressive honor guard. They moved through the space like a weather system, students parting automatically to let them pass, conversations dropping to whispers or stopping entirely. Vordak's eyes, small and mean and currently scanning for something to make his day more interesting, landed on Maya. On the human girl sitting alone at a table in his section, eating her lunch like she had every right to be there. I saw his expression shift. Saw that particular look that meant he had found his entertainment for the afternoon. My stomach dropped somewhere into my lower appendix region. Oh no! Oh no 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 no! Vordak changed direction, his crew following, and walked straight toward Maya's table. The surrounding area went quiet fast, students recognizing the setup, the beginning of what was about to become a spectacle. I wanted to look away, honestly I did, but it is like watching a moon collision. You know it is going to be terrible, but you cannot stop watching. Vordak stopped directly in front of Maya's table, casting a shadow over her food. His arms crossed over his chest, bone ridges prominent. Every inch of his posture screaming threat and dominance. Maya glanced up from her datapad, chewing her food calmly, and waited for him to speak. Just waited like he was a waiter about to ask if she needed anything else. Not a 7-foot-tall violence enthusiast who could probably rip her arms off without much effort. You are in my section, human, Vordak said, his voice that deep rumbling growl that Krakthians have. Not yelling, not yet. Just stating what he clearly considered an obvious fact. Maya swallowed her food, took a sip of her beverage, something that looked like earth water, and responded in the most level, unbothered tone I have ever heard. I did not see your name on the table. The seating chart in the Academy handbook says cafeteria seating is first come, first served. Oh stars above, she just corrected him. She just cited Academy policy at Vordak Ren like this was a reasonable discussion between equals. Rickson made a small squeaking noise next to me. Several other students had stopped eating entirely, watching with the kind of horrified fascination usually reserved for natural disasters. Vordak's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenching in that way that meant his already limited patience was evaporating rapidly. I do not care what the handbook says, Deathworlder. Get up. Find somewhere else to sit. The way he said Deathworlder, loaded with contempt and mockery, would have made most species flinch. Earth's reputation was a sore spot for humans apparently. Something about everyone assuming they were all violent savages just because their planet happened to be a nightmare realm of death and suffering. Maya, for her part, did not flinch. Did not even blink. Really. She just looked at Vordak with those forward-facing predator eyes and said, in that same calm voice, "No, thank you. I am comfortable here. There are other empty tables available if you need seating." The cafeteria was dead silent now. You could have heard a pin drop in vacuum. Everyone was staring, waiting, expecting Vordak to explode, to flip the table to grab this tiny human and physically remove her from his territory. But Vordak did not explode. Not yet. Instead, he leaned forward, planting his massive hands on Maya's table, leaning down so his face was closer to hers. Invasion of personal space turned into intimidation tactic. Maybe you do not understand how things work here, little human. Your kind might think you are special because you come from some dangerous little rock, but here at this academy, I am the dangerous one. So when I tell you to move, you move. Maya set down her fork carefully, precisely, on her tray. She looked up at Vordak with an expression that I can only describe as patient, like a teacher dealing with a particularly slow student who was not understanding a simple concept. I heard you the first time, she said quietly. My answer has not changed. Please move away from my table so I can finish my lunch. She picked up her fork again and went back to eating. Just went back to eating. Like Vordak Wren was not looming over her, like this was not the most tense situation the cafeteria had seen in cycles, like fear was simply not a factor in her decision-making process. Vordak straightened up, and I could see his hands curling into fists. His crew behind him exchanged glances, clearly waiting for his signal, ready to back up whatever he decided to do next. I was gripping the edge of my own table so hard my knuckles were probably turning a darker shade of blue. Every instinct I had was screaming at Maya to just apologize, to move, to de-escalate before this got physical, but she just kept eating, kept reading her datapad. Like the most dangerous bully at the Galactic Academy was nothing more than a minor annoyance. And that, right there, was when I realized something that would have been funny if it was not so absolutely terrifying. Maya Chen was not clueless about Vordak. She was not ignorant of the danger. She knew exactly what she was doing, exactly who she was dealing with. She just did not care. Vordak stood there for about 5 seconds, maybe 6, just staring down at Maya like his brain was trying to process this level of disrespect and coming up with nothing but error messages. His jaw worked silently, grinding teeth that could probably chew through hull plating, and then he made his first big mistake of the day. He reached down and grabbed Maya's food tray, his massive hand wrapping around the edge, and yanked it away from her. The tray skidded across the table, stopping just before it fell off the edge, Maya's carefully selected lunch now completely out of her reach. The cafeteria somehow got even quieter if that was physically possible. This was it. This was the point where every student who had ever been bullied by Vordak knew you were supposed to back down, apologize, leave with whatever dignity you could salvage. This was the moment where you admitted defeat. Maya looked at her displaced tray, then slowly, deliberately, turned her gaze back to Vordak. Her expression had not changed at all, still that same patient calm, like she was dealing with a child throwing a tantrum in a public space. Please return my tray, she said, her voice still level, still polite. I am trying to eat my lunch. Vordak laughed, and it was not a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that has gotten species conquered throughout galactic history, the sound of someone who thinks violence is hilarious and power is everything. His crew joined in, all 4 of them finding this situation absolutely comedy gold. Your lunch, Vordak repeated, still laughing. Did you hear that? The little Deathworlder wants her lunch. He leaned in closer again, his voice dropping into pure mockery. Here is what is going to happen, human. You are going to stand up, walk away, and maybe I will let you come back and clean up this mess later. Or maybe I will dump it on the floor and you can lick it up like the weak little scavenger your species probably is. Several students gasped at that. Insulting someone's species was crossing about 15 different lines of basic decency, even at an academy where bullying was apparently tolerated policy. Vordak's crew was grinning though, enjoying their leader's performance, already anticipating the humans' humiliation. Maya stood up, and for just a second I thought maybe she was actually going to walk away, that she had finally recognized this was a fight she could not win. But she did not move away from the table. She just stood there, still on her side, hands relaxed at her sides, looking up at Vordak with that same unnervingly calm expression. "Last chance," she said quietly. "Walk away, forget this happened. We both go back to our days and nobody gets hurt." Vordak's laughter cut off like someone had flipped a switch. His face darkened, bone ridges seeming to become more prominent, and he moved around the table faster than something his size should have been able to move. Before anyone could react, his hand shot out and grabbed Maya's shoulder, fingers wrapping around it completely, and he squeezed. I heard Rickson gasp beside me. Vordak's grip strength was legendary. He had cracked a Felonian student's collarbone last cycle doing exactly this, and Felonians have reinforced skeletal structures. Maya was human, small, supposedly from a species that was not even supposed to be that physically durable compared to real powerhouse species. But Maya did not cry out, did not even wince. She just looked down at Vordak's hand on her shoulder, then back up at his face, and when she spoke, her voice carried across the entire silent cafeteria with absolute clarity. "Remove your hand from my body right now, or what happens next is your choice and your responsibility. This is your final warning." Her tone had changed, just slightly. Still calm, still controlled, but there was something underneath it now. Something that made the temperature in the room feel like it had dropped several degrees. It was the kind of warning you hear right before emergency alarms start blaring, right before hull breaches happen, right before everything goes catastrophically wrong. Vordak, because he was an idiot with more muscle than sense, did not heed the warning. Instead, he shoved Maya hard, using his grip on her shoulder to push her backward. Any normal student would have gone flying, would have crashed into chairs or tables or ended up on the floor. Maya took exactly 2 steps back to absorb the momentum, her balance never faltering, her footing solid like she had expected the shove and compensated for it automatically. And then Vordak raised his other fist, pulling it back for what was clearly going to be a punch aimed at her face, because apparently shoving the human was not enough entertainment. That was his fatal mistake. The moment that changed everything. What happened next took maybe 2 seconds, probably less, but I swear I saw every single microsecond of it, and I still have trouble believing my own memory. Maya moved, and calling it fast does not even begin to cover it. She was not there, and then she was inside Vordak's reach, her body shifting to the side so his telegraphed punch went through empty air, where her head had been a fraction of a second earlier. Her left hand came up and caught his extended arm at the wrist, fingers wrapping around it with precise placement, and her right hand shot up to the back of his neck, palm flat against his skull base. Vordak's eyes went wide, surprise and confusion replacing aggression, because humans were not supposed to be fast, humans were not supposed to have reflexes like that, humans were not supposed to be able to catch a Kraktian strike like it was happening in slow motion. Maya's voice was still calm, still controlled, but there was steel underneath it now, absolute certainty and zero hesitation. "I warned you." And then she twisted, pulled and pushed simultaneously, using Vordak's own forward momentum and extended posture against him, her entire body mechanics working together in a way that spoke of training, real training, the kind of training that comes from a species that has spent millennia perfecting methods to kill things bigger and stronger than themselves. There was a sound, a sharp crack that echoed through the cafeteria like a gunshot, organic and terrible and final. Vordak's body went instantly limp, his massive frame collapsing like someone had cut all his support strings at once. 7 feet and several hundred pounds of Kraktian bully dropping to the floor in a heap. Maya stepped back smoothly, her hands returning to her sides, her breathing still even and controlled like she had just performed a routine training exercise, instead of dropping the academy's most feared student in less time than it takes to blink. The cafeteria was frozen, everyone staring at the scene with expressions ranging from shock to horror, to absolute disbelief. Vordak lay motionless on the floor, his neck at an angle that was definitely not natural, his eyes open but vacant. Maya looked down at him for a moment, her expression unreadable, then turned and calmly walked toward the cafeteria exit, leaving her tray, her lunch and approximately 800 traumatized witnesses behind her. I could not move, could not breathe, could not process what I had just seen. The quiet human girl, the one who looked like she could not hurt anyone, had just snapped a Crackthean's neck with her bare hands like it was the easiest thing in the world. Rickson's voice was barely a whisper next to me, shaking with fear. What in the holy void of space did we just witness? I did not have an answer, because my brain was too busy recalibrating everything I thought I knew about humans, about Deathworlders, about which species you should actually be terrified of in a galaxy full of dangerous creatures. Turns out, the most dangerous thing in any room is not the one that looks scary. It is the one that stays calm while everyone else is panicking, the one that gives warnings instead of threats, the one that only moves when they have decided that moving is necessary. The quiet ones, as it turns out, are quiet for a reason. The silence that followed that crack, that terrible organic snapping sound, was not the kind of silence you get when everyone is just surprised or shocked. This was the silence of prey animals, realizing there is a predator in their midst. The silence of every survival instinct in 800 different species, all screaming danger at maximum volume while their conscious minds tried desperately to catch up with what had just happened. Vordak Wren, the unstoppable force of the Galactic Academy, the Crackthean who had terrorized students for 5 cycles, who had never lost a physical confrontation, who had seemed utterly invincible, was lying on the cafeteria floor like a discarded puppet. His massive body was completely still. No breathing movement in his chest, no twitching in his limbs, nothing, just absolute, complete stillness. My brain was doing this strange thing where it kept replaying the last 2 seconds over and over, trying to find the moment where Maya had used some kind of weapon, some kind of technology, some kind of trick. But there was nothing. She had used her hands, just her hands, with technique so precise and efficient it looked like she had done it 1,000 times before. Like snapping necks was just something humans knew how to do as casually as other species knew how to operate data pads. The way she had moved, stars above, the way she had moved. It was not random flailing or lucky positioning. Every motion had been deliberate, calculated, biomechanically perfect. She had redirected his force, controlled his balance, isolated his neck, and applied pressure to exactly the right spot with exactly the right amount of rotational torque. That level of precision does not come from accident. That comes from training, from practice, from a species that has systematized violence into an art form. Someone screamed, finally breaking the silence, and then everything happened at once. Students scrambled away from Vordak's body, chairs scraping, trays clattering to the floor, species shouting in dozens of different languages. Vordak's crew, those 3 other Cracktheans who had been grinning and laughing just moments ago, were backing away with expressions of pure terror, staring at their fallen leader like they could not comprehend what they were seeing. The emergency alarm started blaring. Someone had hit the panic button, and within 30 seconds security was pouring into the cafeteria. 4 guards in full tactical gear, equipped with stun weapons and restraint fields, scanning for the threat. They stopped when they saw Vordak on the floor. Then their eyes went wide when someone pointed at Maya, who had paused near the exit, waiting calmly with her hands visible at her sides. Freeze. The lead security officer, a Zorvathian named Commander Thresh, shouted, his weapon raised but not aimed directly at her yet. Do not move, human. Maya did not move, did not even look particularly concerned about having 4 weapons potentially pointed in her direction. She just stood there, still and composed, like this was a minor inconvenience in her afternoon. The medical team arrived next, rushing to Vordak with scanning equipment and emergency supplies. I watched the lead medic, a Thelonian with decades of emergency experience, run his scanner over Vordak's neck region. His face went pale. Well, paler than Thelonians normally are, and he looked up at his team with an expression that said everything about the prognosis. Cervical vertebrae completely severed, he said, his voice professionally controlled but barely. Spinal cord damage is catastrophic. He is gone. Gone. Dead. The word rippled through the cafeteria like a shockwave. Vordak Wren was dead. Killed in 2 seconds by a human girl who probably weighed 1/3 of what he did. Commander Thresh moved toward Maya, cautious now, treating her like an armed explosive instead of a student. Miss Chen, I need you to explain what happened here. Now. Maya's response was so calm it was actually unsettling. Vordak Ren initiated unwanted physical contact. I asked him to stop multiple times. He refused, escalated to aggression, grabbed my shoulder, shoved me, and attempted to strike me in the face with a closed fist. I defended myself using appropriate force to neutralize an immediate threat to my physical safety. There are approximately 800 witnesses who can confirm this sequence of events. I am willing to provide a full statement and cooperate completely with your investigation. She rattled off the explanation like she was reciting a homework assignment. No emotion, no justification, just facts delivered in chronological order. The scary part was how rehearsed it sounded, like she had been taught exactly what to say in situations like this, like humans had protocols for when they accidentally killed someone in self-defense. Commander Thresh exchanged glances with his team, clearly not knowing how to proceed. This was unprecedented. Students fought sometimes, sure, but students did not kill each other in the cafeteria during lunch hour. That just did not happen at the Galactic Academy. Around the cafeteria I could see different reactions playing out. Some students were crying, overwhelmed by witnessing actual death. Others were staring at Maya with expressions of absolute terror, like they had just realized they had been attending classes with something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. A few, and this disturbed me more than anything, were looking at her with something like awe, like she had just done something impressive instead of horrifying. Rickson was shaking next to me, all four of his limbs trembling. Kelvin, the rumors, the stories about Earth, about Deathworlders, they were not exaggerated. They were understated, severely, catastrophically understated. He was right, and that realization was settling into my consciousness like ice water. We had all heard the stories, sure, about Earth being a Class 12 Deathworld, about humans being persistence predators, who hunted prey by literally chasing them until they collapsed from exhaustion, about their planet being so hostile that even their immune systems were weaponized against foreign biology. But stories are just stories until you see the reality demonstrated in front of you with lethal efficiency. Maya Chen had not even broken a sweat, her breathing was still normal, her hands were steady, her expression was calm. She had just killed someone, ended a life, and she looked exactly the same as she had when she was sitting quietly eating her lunch. That level of emotional control after lethal violence was somehow more terrifying than the violence itself. One of Vordak's crew, a Krakthian named Thorvik, was staring at Maya with pure fear in his eyes, and I heard him mutter something in his native language that my translator, Chip, caught. She did not even hesitate. She warned him, and when he did not listen, she just ended him. What kind of species does that? The answer, apparently, was humans. Humans did that. Humans from Earth. The Deathworld that bred survivors so efficient at violence they could drop someone twice their size in the time it takes to blink, and then explain their actions to security like they were filing a maintenance report. The galaxy, I realized with creeping horror, had severely underestimated what it meant when a species evolved on a planet actively trying to kill them every single day. You do not survive that environment by being peaceful. You survive it by being better at violence than everything else trying to eat you, and then you codify that violence into training systems that turn it into reproducible skill. Maya was not an exception among humans. She was probably completely average, and that thought was absolutely, utterly, completely terrifying. The investigation took 3 days, and during those 3 days the entire academy was in a state of collective trauma processing. Classes continued, because bureaucracy waits for no one. But nobody was really paying attention to lectures. Everyone was talking about the incident, replaying security footage that had been leaked despite official restrictions, arguing about what it meant for station safety, and very carefully avoiding Maya Chen whenever she walked down a hallway. The official report came back exactly as Maya had described it. Security footage, witness testimony from literally hundreds of students, and forensic analysis all confirmed the same sequence of events. Vordak initiated contact. Vordak escalated to physical aggression. Vordak attempted to strike Maya with intent to cause bodily harm, and Maya responded with defensive force that, while lethal, was legally justified under Galactic Academy's self-defense protocols and about 15 different interspecies conflict resolution treaties. No charges were filed. Maya Chen was cleared of any wrongdoing. Vordak's death was ruled as justified homicide in self-defense. The Krakthian Diplomatic Corps issued a formal statement expressing disappointment, but acknowledging that their citizen had violated multiple conduct codes and initiated the violent encounter. Case closed, administratively speaking. But I could not close the case in my own head, could not stop thinking about what I had witnessed. So I did what any xenobiology student with access to the galactic database would do. I researched everything I could find about Earth and humans, and what I found kept me awake for 2 straight nights. All 4 of my eyes wide open, reading with growing horror. Earth was not just a Class 12 Deathworld. It was arguably one of the most hostile inhabited planets in known space. Gravity at 1.0 Earth standard, which sounds reasonable until you realize most spacefaring species evolved in gravity between 0.6 and 0.8. Humans were literally carrying extra weight every moment of every day, their bones denser, their muscles stronger, their cardiovascular systems built to pump blood against higher resistance. The predators on Earth, oh stars above, the predators. I found documentation about creatures called bears that could weigh over half a ton and run faster than most species could sprint. Big cats that hunted in coordinated packs or alone with equal efficiency. Crocodilians that had remained evolutionarily unchanged for millions of years because they were already perfect killing machines. And sharks. Those oceanic nightmares, with hundreds of species ranging from tiny to absolutely massive, some of them capable of detecting electrical fields and tracking prey across vast distances. But the predators were not even the worst part. Earth had diseases, microscopic organisms that evolved specifically to invade human biology, and humans had developed immune systems so aggressive they sometimes attacked their own bodies just to be sure. Parasites, venomous insects, toxic plants, extreme weather systems that could level entire cities, tectonic activity that rearranged geography, and an atmosphere that was technically mildly corrosive to several species who visited. And then I found the files on human martial arts. Not just one system, not just a few techniques, but thousands of years of documented combat methodology from dozens of different cultures. Karate, judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, Krav Maga, Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, and hundreds more. Humans had spent millennia developing efficient methods to disable or kill other humans, and they taught these methods recreationally. They had buildings called dojos and gyms where people went specifically to learn violence as a hobby. The technique Maya had used was called a neck snap, and it appeared in multiple martial arts systems, described in technical manuals with the kind of casual precision you would use to explain how to change a light fixture. Step-by-step instructions on how to sever someone's spinal cord using leverage, rotation, and specific pressure points. It was not complicated. It was just effective, refined through generations of humans teaching other humans how to end threats quickly. I sat back from my datapad, all 4 eyes burning from screen exposure, and tried to process the implications. Humans were not just survivors of a death world, they were apex predators who had conquered their entire planet, eliminated or domesticated everything that competed with them, and then gotten bored and started competing with each other, formalizing violence into sport and art. The Academy's perspective on Maya shifted dramatically after the investigation concluded. She went from being the quiet transfer student to being the human, spoken with a mix of respect and fear that honestly seemed more appropriate. Students gave her a wide radius in hallways, not pressed against walls like they had for Vordak, but maintaining careful distance like you would around something that could be dangerous if provoked. Polite distance. Survival distance. When Maya returned to classes the day after she was cleared, walking into advanced astrophysics like nothing had happened, the entire lecture hall went quiet. Professor Thendril nodded to her, more respectfully than he had greeted her before, and Maya took her usual seat 3 rows from the back. The Ventrian student who had originally sat next to her had moved. In fact, the seats on both sides of her and the row in front of her were conspicuously empty. Maya did not seem to notice or care. She pulled out her tablet, opened her notes, and waited for class to begin with that same patient calm she always had. I watched her from my seat, this small human girl who had killed a Kraktian with her bare hands, and tried to reconcile what I was seeing with what I now knew. She looked exactly the same as she had before the incident. Same pulled back hair, same simple clothing, same expression of mild boredom with the universe. Nothing about her appearance had changed. But everything about how I understood her had changed. Appearances, I realized, are not just deceiving. They are actively dangerous when dealing with species you do not fully understand. Maya looked harmless because humans had not evolved to look threatening. They had evolved to be threatening, and looking harmless was probably an advantage when you were a persistence predator who needed to get close to prey. The new unspoken rule at the Galactic Academy was simple, universal, and absolutely non-negotiable. Do not mess with the Deathworld girl. Do not bump into her. Do not take her seat. Do not grab her food. Do not touch her. Do not threaten her. Do not even look at her wrong, because if you do, if you push her past whatever internal threshold humans have for tolerating aggression, she will defend herself with the kind of efficiency that comes from millions of years of evolutionary pressure and thousands of years of formalized combat training. And she will do it calmly, quietly, without hesitation or remorse, because that is what you become when you grow up on a planet that tries to kill you every single day. You become something that does not scare easily, does not back down from threats, and knows exactly how to end a fight before most species realize the fight has even started. Professor Thendril began his lecture on gravitational wave detection, and Maya started taking notes, her stylus moving across her tablet in neat, organized lines. Just another day at the academy for her. Just another class, another lecture, another moment of existing in a universe that had severely underestimated what humans were capable of. I looked down at my own notes, at the equations and theories that suddenly seemed far less important than the biological lesson I had just learned. The most dangerous species in the galaxy, I wrote in the margin, are not the ones that look scary. They are the ones that stay calm when everyone else is panicking, the ones that warn you before they act, the ones that give you chances to walk away. And if you are stupid enough not to take those chances, well, then you get exactly what Vordak got. A very permanent lesson about why you should never ever underestimate a human from Earth. Maya glanced up from her notes, and for just a second her eyes met mine across the lecture hall. She did not smile, did not nod, just looked at me with that same calm expression, and then went back to her work. I looked away quickly, my 3 hearts racing, and made myself a promise. I was going to be very, very polite to Maya Chen for the rest of my time at this academy. Actually, I was going to be polite to every human I ever met for the rest of my life. It just seemed like the smart survival strategy.